Okay, thanks, Adam. Good morning, everybody. We'll get started with the regular board meeting. So I'll just mention the fact that we do have some items on the consent agenda. This would be the time to remove those off if you want to discuss them in the main portion of the meeting. Not seeing any hands on that, so looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? That motion carries. That brings us down to consent agenda, corporate issues. Looking for a motion on that one. Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? That motion carries. That brings us to section B, development services. Item B1, a DVP in area A. Over to the CAO.
Thank you, Chair. This application is seeking a variance to the interior parcel line that applies to the subject property in order to undertake a subdivision of the subject property and to place a new parcel line within 50 meters of the gravel process operation. The recommendation is on the screen. Staff has a PowerPoint presentation and is here to answer questions after that.
Okay, so over to staff.
Good morning. All right. This is for the file number 8/2025 029 DVP. Location, it's located southeast of Vesuvius, just by the border. The OCP is resource area, zoning, resource area site specific. It's entirely in the ALR, and it contains aggregate extraction operation at the moment. How does this work? Thank you, Chris. This proposal, they're seeking a variance to allow for a 2-lot subdivision. Both lots measuring 28.3 hectares.
Wow.
Next slide. Resource area, the minimum interior site parcel line setback is at 50 meters, sorry. And the proposed variance is to vary the interior side parcel line setback from 50 meters to 0 meters. For the resource area OCP, which supports the use of lands designated as resource area for natural resource extraction. And as for the zoning, which permits natural resource extraction and concrete planned as principal uses. Considerations, it's not expected to impact the area character. There's surrounded by large parcel sizes, and it's largely undeveloped. It's been in operation for approximately 30 years, and it aligns with the electoral area A OCP, and as the property will continue to support sand and gravel extraction. Future it's okay. Future change in use could create land use conflict, as the reduced setback may no longer provide the separation and compatibility intended for the zoning bylaw. We got two options: that the RDOS board authorized the application to reduce the minimum interior parcel side setback from 50 meters to 0 meters for the 2 proposed parcels to be created by the subdivision, or that the RDOS board not authorize the application to reduce the minimum interior parcel line setback from 50 meters to 0 meters. It's a double slide. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just check if there's any questions. I'm not seeing any hands. I did have the one. It's interior parcel line is the only one that would then have a 0 setback. None of the other 3 sides of that property would have 0 setback, just to confirm that?
To the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. I was just going to ask, is there someone who's prepared to move this for me? Director Bush is moving it. A seconder, please. Thank you. Any discussion on this? Not seeing any hands. Again, first one out today, but it is a rural vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? That motion carries. Over to B2, another ALC referral in Area A. CAO.
Thank you, Chair. An application has been submitted to Agricultural Land Commission under section 20.3.5 of the ALC and referred to the Regional District in order to permit the removal of soil from the lands within the Agricultural Land Reserve. The recommended motion is on the screen. There is a PowerPoint presentation and staff's here to answer questions.
Okay, over to staff.
Thank you. I'll just wait for the slide to come up.
I don't know that the clicker's working this morning. So.
Magic touch. So conveniently, this item does actually touch on the exact same property that the board just considered. I just wanted to add a little bit of context as it relates to this particular file. So this property is currently utilized for an aggregate extraction works, and is operated under by 2 businesses actually under one single mines permit. And as discussed under the previous item, the property owners are looking to subdivide their property into 2 lots, and it's understood that the intent of that is so that each of the businesses can operate and own one of the resultant parcels, and then they would ultimately get their own mines permit to undertake the work separately. So while the board has already considered and forwarded the applicant's application to subdivide the property to the commission in September, they now must also obtain the commission's approval for any works that have already surpassed their previous ALC approval for extraction works on the property, as well as expanded works that they're seeking to do in the future. So with this in mind, the current proposal under this particular ALC application is to remove 100,000 cubic meters of soil, specifically sand and gravel aggregates, over an area of 13.3 hectares to an average depth of 10 meters and a maximum depth of 12 meters over the course of 10 years. So as it relates to this particular application, the property, as mentioned previously, is designated as resource area under the OCP bylaw, which does support the use of the property for natural resource extraction. Similarly, the resource area site-specific zoning does permit natural resource extraction and concrete plant as principal uses on the property. With respect to the Agricultural Land Reserve and the ALR use regulation, the use regulation does provide for limited aggregate removal allowances up to 500 cubic meters. However, as this proposal is for a large scale aggregate operation, which exceeds this amount, they do require approvals from the commission. So just some considerations for the board. As mentioned, this proposal is consistent with both the resource area, OCP, and zoning designations that apply to the property. While we do recognize that non-farm uses, the establishment of those uses or expansion of those uses within the ALR would generally reduce the overall agricultural land base. A reclamation plan has been submitted by the applicant, which outlines the various works that will be undertaken to rehabilitate the lands to an agricultural capability that's consistent with the surrounding lands, so largely forest grazing. So the board is being asked to consider 2 options today, whether to authorize or not to authorize the application to proceed to the commission. And for the reasons previously stated, we are recommending that this application be authorized to proceed.
Okay, thank you for that. Director Bush, you're moving it. Perfect. Is there a seconder? Thank you. It's on the floor. Any discussion? Director Gettins.
Thanks. I just actually have a question. And I know this goes to the LR for decision, and I support that. But my question is, if they're able to go to the ALC, will they have to be required to share where they're going to put all that soil that they want to remove? Because I'm thinking what I'm understanding is that it's not the product that they're selling that they're removing. They're removing the soil to get to the product they can sell. Am I understanding that correctly?
Over to staff.
So the wording that is used under the ALC Act in their application process I think it's a bit misleading. So the removal of soil itself is actually specifically to remove
aggregate.
Okay.
So as part of the business, it's not necessarily that they're moving unrelated soils from the property.
Okay, clarified that. Oh, perfect. Any other discussion? Not seeing any hands. This one's a corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. B3, South Okanagan Regional Growth Strategy, CAO.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide the board with options in relation to the statutory requirement to consider at least once every 5 years if the South Okanagan Regional Growth Strategy bylaw must be reviewed for possible amendment. The recommended motion is on the screen. There is a PowerPoint presentation and staff's here to answer questions.
All right, over to staff.
Just waiting for the PowerPoint to come up.
There it is.
Okay, there we go. So as mentioned, item B3 relates to a 2025 review of the South Okanagan Regional Growth Strategy. And the reason for this report in front of the board is so that the board can meet its legislative requirements, being that every regional district in BC that has implemented a regional growth strategy is obligated under the Act to at least every 5 years consider whether that RGS requires review for possible amendment. And as a corollary to that requirement, the second component is in reviewing, the regional district has to refer out to agencies that are listed under the Act for their input on whether the strategy requires review for possible amendment.
That clicker just, nope.
Okay, and just a little bit of background context for the board. As the board is aware, the RGS was last reviewed in 2020, which means 2025 was the next 5-year review period. That 2020 review is still in progress, and it is listed on the 2026 work plan. And just in light of this consideration, staff are recommending that this ongoing review be completed first before any further amendments are considered. But notwithstanding that, staff did refer out to agencies in order to meet the statutory requirements. Those agency referral comments are listed in the agenda package in full, but just in brief summary, 3 agencies being Environment and Climate Change Canada, Lower Nippit Irrigation District, and Regional District of Central Okanagan did write back indicating that in their opinion, the regional growth strategy possibly required review for amendment. And just at a high level, the themes that were identified by these agencies included enhancing the monitoring framework, enhancing environmental and climate change policies, aligning policies between jurisdictions. I think this one was specifically Regional District of Central Okanagan, who is currently, at least my understanding, is also reviewing their regional growth strategy. And the last one is introducing policies to enhance support for improvement districts. Staff did also meet with the Technical Advisory Committee for the RGS. This is comprised of senior planning staff for all of the member municipalities, as well as the regional district. And so there's just a high-level discussion at this committee meeting, and the committee did recommend that a few additional policy areas be considered for review in future, just in recognition of emerging regional priorities. And so these are the policy areas listed below that were identified. But notwithstanding that, the advisory committee did agree with staff that this could be postponed to a future date, just in light of the ongoing review. And so just by way of discussion, there's nothing in the Act that precludes the board from initiating a review at any time. We're not bound to the 5-year cycle. And so in light of that, the staff recommendation is that if any of those policy areas identified by referral agencies or the advisory committee are agreeable for the board for possible review or amendment, that those simply be done as part of the next scheduled strategic planning cycle in 2027. However, staff recognize that if there is a desire to address those earlier than that date, the option to adjust the scope of the RGS review is available. However, this would require scoping out the project and potentially deferring a corresponding number of FTE hours from this year's work plan into 2027. And so as mentioned, the administrative recommendation is that in accordance with Section 452 of the Local Government Act, a review of the Regional Growth Strategy bylaw for possible amendment has been considered by the board and would not be pursued at this time, and that the following items raised by the RGS Technical Advisory Committee be brought forward for consideration as part of the 2027 strategic plan process.
Okay, thank you for that. Direction from the board, Director Monteith? Question or?
I guess, through the chair, I guess I'm sort of a bit disappointed because I've spent a lot of time with my commission, area planning council, kind of reviewing this, and to kick it forward is almost disappointing to that committees that have also worked on this. So, you know, specifically the Collegan coming out of the regional growth area. So, is that what I'm hearing, that basically that those voices would not be heard moving forward? Or basically we'd have to go back and do it again?
Over to staff.
To the chair, those changes are still being incorporated as part of the ongoing 2020 review that is still a work in progress and is on this year's work plan. Just anecdotally, staff are anticipating that that will be brought to one of the upcoming board meetings for further discussion.
Okay. Follow up first, Director Monteith.
Okay, thank you. So I do hear that it will continue in 2026 and hopefully we'll get that through. I guess the other note is housekeeping, and that it's the Lower Nippit Improvement District, not Irrigation District. And I also am concerned about a perception of the regional district supporting irrigation improvement districts, if that's the direction we're going in, or I don't know if that's a philosophy question, because historically we haven't, and now we're empowering them to be included. So I guess I feel like there's a bit of a mixed message going on.
I think that's going to be a future discussion for sure, but over to Director Coyne.
So you want to kick this over to next year? What's your plan for next year? Because I foresee your workload being rather large with changes that are coming and everything else. Are we looking at a total revamp of the RGS? Are we looking at kicking that down the road again? Like, what do we, because we're still working on one that's, you know, well, we're on 6 years of the same review. So just wondering where we're going to be in a year.
Staff?
To the chair, I mean, that's wholly up to the board as part of your strategic planning process. We're just simply bringing forward the items that other agencies have flagged for possible review as part of the RGS, and whether you want us at a staff level to pursue those or not will be determined with your next strategic plan process. So we'll leave it up to you.
Okay. Any other? Director Gettens?
Thanks to the board. I'm going to move the administrative recommendation, and if there's a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Okay, moved and seconded. It's on the floor. Go ahead,
Great,
Director
thanks.
Gettens.
Thanks. I think that I appreciate when there's ongoing work and there's new work and we keep adding new work. And I think it makes sense what the TAC's proposing, that we finish up what we started before we bring on new things. A lot of these items, like they're big and they're big communication, you know, and engagement with citizens as well. Like, you know, when you look at homelessness supports and water security and like they're big conversations that we're not going to get done this year for sure. So I think it makes sense to finish what we started. I think if there's items that we can bring in, what I'm reading is we can introduce those items on an individual basis if we want to tackle that this year, and then let it to the next board to figure out their strategic plan for the following 4 years. So I support it. Thanks.
Okay, any other discussion? Motions on the floor? Director Federico.
Thank you, through Chair. Just for staff, how do you see OK Falls folding into this? You know, with what happens at the end of the year, they're going to be their own, potentially be their own local government. So then do they then have to ask to become a part of this service? Can they deny being part of this service? And then, you know, what kind of, how does that workload all kind of fit?
Or to staff?
So to the chair, there is a section in the Act that speaks specifically to this. I don't have the exact wording in front of me at the moment, but we did look into this after the vote to incorporate and just how that would impact the RGS. And as I recall, they're automatically included, basically no change to their status. So.
Okay. Director Taylor.
Not super familiar with this topic. So coordination with First Nations governments. So does that mean if we're not including this now, we're not considering that at all in our current level of revision? Or to what extent are you considering, where are you drawing the line?
Staff?
So through the chair, so there are statutory requirements under the Act in relation to the adoption and amendment of an RGS. It speaks to coordination and seeking input from local First Nations. And so obviously we're going to follow statutory requirements. Ben can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the concern with the Technical Advisory Committee in relation to that coordination with First Nations is just putting forward for the board's consideration whether you want to go above and beyond existing practices, do more than what's required under the Act. But what that looks like would have to be scoped as part of any project, and where's the board's comfort level on that? So we'd have to get further direction from you.
Okay, follow up,
So
Director
that
Taylor?
At present then, the RGS would be brought forward with the minimum expectations or the statutory expectations for coordination with First Nations.
Staff?
Yeah, through the chair, we would agree with meeting statutory requirements for consultation. That's what we always strive to do. So.
Okay. Any further discussion, Director Federico?
Yes, thank you, Chair. One more quick question. How laborsome will it be to update the population numbers? Because those ones are from a little while ago, so kind of not so much skews it, but I think some updated numbers can help us then kind of move forward. So if that's not too laborsome, it'd be nice to see.
I'm not sure, but
To the chair, the 2021 census data is the most recent data available. That was already flagged for inclusion as part of those 2020 changes, so that is forthcoming.
okay, so it's in the queue already. Perfect. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? That motion carries. Down to Public Works, Water Regulatory Bylaw to add Skaha Estates Water System, CAO.
Thank you. And before I start the purpose, just to state that Skaha State Water System will be our 12th water system that we will be controlling. And the purpose of this report is to add the newly converted Skaha State Water System into the Water Regulatory Bylaw. There is no PowerPoint presentation, but staff's here to answer your questions.
Looking for direction on this. Director Taylor, are you prepared to move that?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Moved, seconded. It's on the floor. Any discussion or questions? Director Gattens, go ahead.
Thanks. I just have a question of clarity. So going through the whole process, and this is the final say for the board that it's all accepted and it's all forward and it's part of the regional district now?
CAO?
It is our water system and our staff's up there working on it, yes.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. I think it's great. Just congratulations. I think that's fantastic. So.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Seeing no, call the question. All in hand or all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Over to Community Services. Addition of species to the BC Weed Control Regulation. Over to the CAO.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to inform the RDOS Board of the upcoming provincial review of the Weed Control Regulatory Schedule A and advocate for additional invasive species listing. There is no PowerPoint presentation, but staff's here to answer questions.
Okay, over to Director Gilbert.
Yeah, thanks for the chair. Just one question on this. I don't see it on this list, but on the other list, do you have burdock as one of the species?
Go to staff.
Apologies for that. The only list that I have is what's on the board report here.
So just the 10 or whatever it is there. Okay. Did you have a follow-up, Director Gilbert, or?
Yeah, thanks for the chair. I guess like it would be one that I would like to see also put on that list is the burdock plant as well, because it does very much affect the avian species in the Okanagan, and I've pulled many of those plants up in my time.
Come on up to the front, Lisa.
Good morning, through the chair. Director Gilbert, the burdock is already listed as a regionally noxious species. So currently there's 39 species listed as provincially noxious. So anywhere in the province of British Columbia, it's their declared noxious species. And then under the regulations, part 2 are what's referred to as regionally noxious species. And there are a few that are listed there for the regional district of Okanagan-Similkameen, including puncture vine, burdock, and sulfur cinquefoil. So the last time that this regional district put forward additional species was in 2012 when we added sulfur cinquefoil. So this would be a new change since 2012. So it's been 13, 14 years.
Okay, go ahead, Director Gilbert, follow up
Thank
again.
you so much, and I appreciate that. And just one more, is yellow flag iris also within those lists as well?
Yeah. Yellow flag iris is currently a provincially listed noxious species.
Okay, Director Monteith and then Bush.
Thank you through the chair. So I get emails and calls about the Siberian elm often. So I guess I'm curious too, with adding them to this list, what sort of supports do private property owners have to remove those? And when they do remove those trees, taking them to the dump, is that clearly explained somewhere that they could understand the process? Because I understand that they can't just take it to the regular composting or the yard waste process, like they actually, it's a bit of a different process. So is there some guidance that I could share?
Over to staff or Lisa.
Combination through the chair. Director Monteith, there are a few supports right now. So through the contract that our organization Oasis has with the regional district, we are able to provide technical advice to property owners. We're able to provide links to arborists and other professionals to assist with proper removal. And our organization has also embarked on a new initiative through the South Okanagan Conservation Fund. We have completed year 1. We are anxiously awaiting approval of our second year of our 3-year invasive tree project. Under that, we're creating new tools. We are working with the regional district and other municipalities to get efficient and practical information to property owners, and part of that project will involve a initiative or incentive, and we're providing a free native tree or shrub for replacement. And then if once they prove they've taken down an invasive tree. In terms of the landfill disposal, we are working with the regional district on facilitating that process. Right now, we started the conversation in 2025, and that is continuing, and I'll pass it over to staff.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just add that there's a number of internal discussions happening currently that are developing the process of landfill disposal, some education components to that, signage, and public outreach so that people understand like the ideal time to dispose of the trees, when is the best part of the season to remove invasive species or specifically the trees, so that there is safe disposal and it's not an additional, necessarily, like we don't have that additional risk for spread.
Okay, follow up, Director Monteith.
Yes, thank you through the chair. So I would love to have that information put in SCAHA Matters, because I do hear a lot about that, and there's a lot of community conversations about it, and some of it is probably a little more cautious than needs to be. So I'd like to have it just very clean and clear so they know what to do and when to do it. So thank you.
Okay, Director Bush and then Taylor.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning. In Costin, I've noticed a lot of puncture vine along the roads. So it's on road allowance, and I'm just wondering who's responsible for that. Is it Modi or is it us?
Over to Lisa.
Thank you.
Through the chair, Director Bush, the Ministry of Transportation and Transit is responsible for road right-of-way. Our organization used to have the contract to oversee that treatment. We no longer do that. They are hiring their own contractor. There's been someone coming down from the Prince George area that was awarded that contract for the last couple of years.
So we contact Modi then. Yeah, thanks.
Correct.
Okay. Director Taylor and then Holmes?
Yeah, just wondering what the implication is if we put these plants on the list. Like if you walk along the KVR, there's a lot of Siberian elm, I think. I think probably something else on here. So are we assuming liability for removal of that? Is there a requirement for removal if somebody requests that on our property?
Let staff answer that.
So just a little bit of clarification. So adding items to our Schedule A for our bylaws just allows us to use the funding to address these. It's not necessarily a liability thing. When it's recognized, then the staff are able to work towards removing them.
Follow up to that?
Is there a requirement that we remove it? If it's on our,
To the best of our ability, yes.
Okay. Director Holmes?
Thanks. We've kind of been skirting around this, but I'd just like to know what does, if these species are on the Schedule A, what does that allow us to do that we can't do now in terms of controlling them?
Staff, go ahead.
Through the chair. So having these on are listed as species that we're able to address. We are able to go in and work through removal process for lands that we have authority over. We can't access through our bylaws. We're not able to address species that are on private property, but we can, like it sort of ties into our bylaw enforcement component as well. So if there are properties that are untidy, unsightly, having these listed gives us the opportunity to work with property owners in that sense, that they are encouraged to remove invasive species off their properties.
Follow up.
Go ahead.
So essentially it's to make it easier to access private property, because we can get rid of any of these things on public property now. Okay, right? There's nothing stopping us.
Staff?
Through the chair, there is limitations to what we are able to do with the funding that we receive related to invasive plant removal. So unless they're on the list, we can't address that.
Such as?
Any of the trees that, like Tree of Heaven, we don't have, because it's not listed as on the bylaw, we can't use our funding to remove Tree of Heaven.
Really? Provincial funding?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And another one?
Go ahead.
Sorry. And so what goes into deciding whether to recommend it for a regional list or a province-wide list? Because I mean, things like Russian olive, they're not just here, right? They're so how and what's the difference of whether it's it's on the regional list or the provincial list?
Staff?
Through the chair. So the way that the provincial top 25 list works is that it's based on land-based coverage. So if an invasive species, for it to get to the level that it's recognized on provincially identified mapping, there's the possibility that by the time it's reached that land-based minimum or that trigger, our entire region could be covered with an invasive species. We could be completely overrun with any one of these species before it hits that provincial target or trigger. So if we have these added to our regional list, it's a lower, because the region is smaller, the space is smaller, we have the ability to look at it before it gets out of hand versus the province coming in and addressing it, if that makes sense.
So it's the scale of infestation, basically.
We're looking at it from our regional perspective versus waiting for the province to address it from a provincial land base. My goodness. Land base.
Well, I don't want to monopolize the conversation. So conceivably, if other regional districts came in with the same species and they're hearing the same thing from a whole bunch of, then they might just put it on the provincial list.
Potentially, but it has to do with the percent of coverage on the land base for the province as an entire unit versus our small regions.
Okay. Director Gettins.
Thanks. Just sort of along the same theme, through the chair, when we did the Area F invasive species trial and pilot that's continuing to go, because that funding is coming from rural projects, then the list is sort of like what Director Holmes was saying, is that we could just do whatever staff thinks is best, because that funding came from rural projects rather than your provincial program. Okay, thank you. I just wanted the clarity. Thanks.
Okay, Director Taylor.
Sorry, I guess I'm just worried about the Tree of Heaven issue on KVR. And I'm just wondering if our bylaw were to cite a resident to clean up their property, citing this being on their property, could they turn around and say, I want that off the KVR? And would we then have to remove it from the KVR?
Staff?
Through the chair. So our responsibility, like Parks maintains trails as it does currently. We are removing Tree of Heaven systematically across the KVR. So the way that the bylaw through private property would work is if there's an untidy, unsightly property that's been left to overgrow with invasive species that are actively spreading to neighboring properties and onto public property. It's a little bit of a different scale than it would be for the trails, but it's already being maintained and addressed by parks. There are components or there are circumstances where they may not have come across the Tree of Heaven. We welcome notification from the public if they do see them along the trails, and it does get addressed.
Okay, I've got Director Roberts and then Gilbert.
Thank you, and through the chair. Similar to a follow-up from Director Bush around the puncture vine, I'm wondering in regards to the extreme proliferation of Siberian elm in the right-of-ways, the highways, the work that AIM does, the cutting down, we're just finding whatever is being done in Modi right-of-ways is basically spreading the Siberian elm even more. And so I'm wondering, does this help us in advocating towards the province's responsibilities in dealing with this invasive in the area? Because yes, it's Modi's responsibility, but then to be able to say these things have been added, these are tied to the regional as well as provincial. Does it give us any further clout or at least a better voice?
Staff?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Having a species on the list would certainly help the regional district with their advocacy efforts.
Okay, Director Gilbert.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. And this is my last question on this. Do the central and North Okanagan also have regulations similar to this with these species on there as well? And are they taking a proactive approach to try to also deal with these species?
Over to staff.
I think that's me. Through the chair, yes, the Central and North Okanagan regional districts do have they have their own approaches that are somewhat different from ours. And it was in fact the listing of the invasive trees onto the regional district of Central Okanagan list in spring of 2024 that somewhat spearheaded all this. They've got an incredibly lengthy list that goes far beyond the noxious weed list. And I think there's some questions around the legality of their list. So currently this regional district is following lawyer advice, which is to be in alignment with the provincial legislation. So, and then that's the Central Okanagan. They have a very, very strong enforcement program. They don't have an organization such as OASIS to help them with the overarching prevention, mitigation, and education programming. And same goes in the North Okanagan. In fact, they've taken a step backwards in recent years where they do, I'm not sure if they do any enforcement. It's very light up there. And we, in fact, get a lot of phone calls from residents of the Central and North Okanagan asking us to come up there and help them out.
Follow up, go ahead, Director Gilbert.
Yeah, thanks for the chair. And just my point on that is this disappointing here in a way, because if we're doing it here in the south, unfortunately, the water runs down and that's how most invasive species move. So if they're not going to enforce or do much work up there, it's kind of a pain. I remember doing work in Okanagan Mountain Park, and there's a giant patch of yellow flag iris across the lake that just keeps sweeping over into the park. So I hope that, you know, maybe our staff talks to their colleagues in the north and the central to say, hey, we're taking this proactive approach. You need to do this too, because really, ultimately, at the end of the day, if you keep invasive species there, they're just going to keep coming down to the south, and we need to have that from the north all the way down to the south to manage this.
I'm not sure. Go ahead if there's a
Through
comment.
the chair, if I can comment. Our organization has, as of this year, has been in place for 30 years. We're the longest running invasive species society in the province, and we are not opposed and have done in the past of exploring a valley-wide program. We think there would be a lot of promise for that. I'm not sure what that would look like, but one valley, one water. We all need to work in collaboration, but somebody needs to start the initiative and start the process, which can then build momentum. So our organization very much supports this resolution moving forward, and then we're still dependent on it being approved by Ministry of Forests. It doesn't make it a done deal that these 10 species would be added to the list. And in fact, in their review, I think the province may be adding some of these species to the provincial noxious weed list, but we're not privy to that information. So we can only do what we feel is appropriate for our region, but a big part of that would indeed be encouraging our partners in the Central and North Okanagan to take collective action, and we work together to manage these species. That's the only way we're going to get effective results.
Okay, I've got Director Gettins and then Coyne.
I just wanted to move the administrative recommendation.
Moved, seconded, it's on the floor. Director Coyne, you had a question?
Well, I was just going to say, I think a few years ago, Director Gettins was working with TNRD board members on something about invasive species. I remember helping coordinate some of that. I mean, to Director Gilbert's point, I don't think it's a staff necessarily responsibility. I think it would be our responsibility to reach out to our colleagues to the north and ask them to maybe put it on their priority list rather than have staff put it on a priority list for them. So, I mean, I'd be happy to take that back to Silga as a thing for us to work on regionally, but I would need more than just me taking it forward.
Absolutely, it's something we can all advocate for sure. Director Gettins, follow?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I can go through our notes and everything about that too, and be happy to support that as well. And that's when we took this slogan. Lisa, and Shelley, you guys were all a big part of that as well, so we can probably bring that back up. So we'll do some work on our end.
Okay, we've got the motion on the floor. Any further discussion or questions? Not seeing any hands, so we'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? That motion carries. Down to finance. Community Works Funding, CAO.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to authorize the expenditure of $10,000 from the Electoral Area C Community Works Tax Reserve for the purchase and installation of a new compressor station at the Willowbrook Fire Hall. To be fully transparent, because this was a time-sensitive as this was a time-sensitive safety issue, after discussion with Director Shahal, I authorized the purchase as soon as we found out that there was an issue with the compressor, but it still has to come to the board to officially approve the change in the budget.
Okay, so I'll go to Director Chahal direction on this one. I'm assuming you're moving it?
Yeah, I'd like to move the recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? That motion carries. E2, 5-year financial plan bylaw, 134 CAO.
Thank you, Chair. This is to adopt the 2026-2030 5-year financial plan that reflects all of the budget presentations and workshops that the board has previously seen. One of the things that I'd like the board to know is that there's our 15 budget roadshows that have been confirmed and 2 that are we're looking to be confirmed. So 17 roadshows. Also, just to let the board know, is number of times we go to the roadshows and no one shows up. And what we're stating now at the staff level is if no one shows up after one confirmation of a meeting, we're not going to have a second one there's just a lot of work involved in rescheduling a second meeting if no one shows up in the first meeting. So just let the board know that that's what I'm recommending. And with that, I will pass that on to the deputy CFO and the CFO.
Okay, go ahead, Wayne or
Yep, thank
Noel.
you. So through the chair, we'll start the presentation. So this is the tax requisition summary. As we can see at the bottom there, the 4.88%, that is the tax requisition for the RDOS as a whole. Another thing to note is the non-market growth percentages are from 2024. We have just received the 2025 numbers and they will be reflected in the second reading. Of note for the 2025 non-market growth numbers, the overall is 1.44, so it went down 0.03 for the total of the RDOS. The main changer is Area B must have had quite a bit of development because their non-market growth percentages jumps to 10.86%. So you'll see that on the second reading, so don't be alarmed that it's a very large number. I've done a slide. This next one here is 4.69%. This is just to show the board that the Similkameen Transit Route 50 is the result of 0.17 of the overall percentage.
Question?
Yeah, just, can you please redefine again non-market growth and net change and what the difference is? Thanks.
So non-market growth is any development that has happened during the year. So for instance, if 3 houses went up on a road in 2025, now in 2026, the tax is being split by 13 houses instead of just 10 houses. So that's what the percentage growth is from, and that's from BC Assessment. They're the ones that supply the market growth numbers.
Okay.
And to delve a little bit more into that, when you look at Area B, the 10% is $20 million of assessed value. $20 million of assessed value in Penticton is like less than 1%. So the non-market growth in Penticton, even though it's 1%, it could be $20 million, where Area B, $20 million is 10%. So it all depends on your assessed value for each area.
Okay.
Through the chair, sorry.
No problem. Continue on.
So just going through the workshop decisions that were made by the board. This is an overview. These are all noted in the first reading. So there were 8 applications received. The board approved 4 applications. Okanagan Similkameen Conservation Alliance was declined due to ineligibility as the organization had received funding in 2 of the last 4 years. The organization is eligible to apply again in the 2027 budget process. The Similkameen Country Development Association self-removed their application prior to the budget workshop.
Got a question here, Director Bush?
Yeah, sorry. I struggling with this $50,000 grant for the baseball scoreboard. And it's a wonderful thing, but I just, because of our tax increases are so bad that I think somewhere we have to slow down a bit, because I don't know if this is what our taxpayers should be paying for. It's not a necessity. It's great, but it's not a necessity, so I'm having a hard time with this one.
Yeah. Unless someone makes the motion to remove it and it's supported by the board, it's gonna stay on there, so just
Yeah, and
aware of the
I'm,
process.
if, you know, if everybody wants it, that's fine, but I just stating my opinion.
Okay,
Yeah, if there's nobody supporting me, that's,
Director McCordoff, another question?
Thank you. I definitely support Director Bush's concerns. I spoke to it at a meeting in December. I'm not comfortable with it at all. I think it's a huge amount of money. When we argued about how much we should give the other people that got some money, and we talked about it, debated it for a long time, and yet we went ahead with a $50,000 for this. I'm quite concerned, so I agree with Director Bush.
Okay. There's still no motion on the floor, but Director Monteith.
For giggles, I'll make the motion to remove it.
Okay, there's a mover, a seconder, it's on the floor. Any further discussion on this one? Director Holmes?
I would say, you know, when this was first discussed around the table, people probably let their emotions get the better of them. And I understand that, given the backstory and everything like that. But having already indicated that we're going to support it, and now saying we're not, you're going to make matters worse. It's going to create, you know, you're raising up these hopes only to deflate them again for what's a really sensitive, emotional story, and I get that. But you know, that's I'm gonna say it's going to make the situation you were trying to help a month ago it's now going to be in reverse. You're going to make it worse.
Okay, Director Barkwell?
Yes, as someone said, this did have a lot of discussion. And what really came out and struck me was just how regional it is that the ball players would be coming. They need fields in one community or another. They need them everywhere. And it definitely seemed to fit the bill as a regional project. Whereas others are much, even though they take place in this community or that community, they're not quite as regional in impact. So I thought that part was pretty persuasive. But well, we you know, some people might change their mind.
Okay, Director Federico?
Thank you, the chair. We were at a hockey game in Kamloops on the weekend, and their scoreboard was broken. And I was sitting and chatting with one of the parents who expressed extreme frustration. And as a parent sitting in the crowd, visiting, also looking at a scoreboard that wasn't working, also being frustrated. So it may seem like a small thing, and I cheekily poked at that parent and was like, oh, well, why doesn't your city council pay for this? So you know, which was kind of a poke there. But, you know, it seems kind of, I don't want to say insignificant, like it is a scoreboard. And to Director Barkwell's comment that it is regional, and it's more than that. It's provincial, it's federal, it's potentially international, depending on what players come to our area. So it really isn't just for local kids in Summerland. It is truly for everyone who comes to the community. And it can be a big deal when you're representing your region and your home. So I'm in support of it.
Okay, Director Monteith?
Thank you, through the chair. I guess to the directors of Summerland, is there an opportunity for external grant money to pay for this? Has that kind of been ruled out? I don't recall that from the conversation.
I'll go to Director Holmes to potentially answer that.
Well, I mean, if you think of it's part of a bigger project, the whole Field 96 project. It's bringing that, you know, a whole field that had been kind of in a state of disrepair for many years, back up to a competitive state, right? And they fundraised, you know, they had the GoFundMe page and everything for the whole project. And I can't remember how much they raised, but we matched it. And I think the city, District of Summerland matched that. I think $185,000 we matched it with. So they have been doing community fundraising, been doing a lot. I think they talked about that in their presentations.
It was. I've got a couple hands online. I'm going to go to Director Stewart first and then Director Roberts.
Thank you through the chair and happy new year, everybody. Just a couple of comments. One, I entirely agree that presentation and being able to attract more a broader audience to our local youth initiatives is nothing but valuable for the youth in our entire region. And we've seen that across the board in a lot of sports. So there's certainly value in that. But to my colleague's comment with regard to increasing or creating upset or disruption in a decision that's already been made, I would just want to offer that potentially there were people that also maybe didn't have an opportunity to be heard or have some misgivings or concerns that I think that weighs equally, that they deserve an opportunity to be heard. Maybe they weren't prepared or had second thoughts after the decision was made. So I think this is a great discussion for that. Thank you.
Okay, Director Roberts.
Thank you through the chair. As stated, yes, it's an emotional plea that tugs at the heart. Also in regards to its regional relevance, I think that I brought up about how in Hadley we had one of the best ball diamonds created in the early 70s that ended up getting completely vandalized in the late 80s and into the 90s. And it at one point was taking in ball teams from all over the province. So the relevance at a regional level is not in question. I think what becomes more challenging, to the point and follow-up of Director Bush, it's, you know, we're looking at, like, in Area G on an average of nearly 10% increase in taxation. And you know, we've gone into great debate at this table around the $80,000 in regards to homelessness planning and research and work with the 100 homes. And you know, where it sits in regards to priority is definitely a lot further up the food chain in regards to our priorities. So $50,000 does make a big difference in regards to these discussions. I don't break down that it's irrelevant. It is relevant, but we may have to look at whether or not there's a different option, if there's less, or we look at it in regards to over a period of time. I'm not sure, but you know, I was definitely one of those emotionally tugged and seeing the regional relevance of it, and it voted for it. I'm more likely to vote against it now, just in regards to priorities across the table. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Director Barkwell?
Yeah, I'd like to add to Mayor Holmes' comments. The external contributions, I mean, everybody's been chipping in here. The district matched the fundraising by the local organization, and also there was the Blue Jays grant, 185,000 to the Blue Jays fund. I don't know how many communities in Canada benefited from it, but it was a big thing. It was on TV and such. So to be able to get that grant is a unique opportunity. And this is, so I know that people think, yeah, we don't want to be the only ones paying for this. And there is huge contributions from, you know, the whole community, a national contribution, and the district.
Okay, good points, Director Federico, and then I'm going to call the question on this.
Thank you, the chair. I'm just putting out there then, is this an all or nothing, or is there room to maybe partial if we go to 20 or 25,000 instead of just completely giving them nothing?
At this stage, it would depend on how the vote ends up. As always, we can put forth an alternative depending on the direction this goes. So. Not seeing any other hands, I'm going to call a question on this, and this is to remove the $50,000 for the Summerland Minor Baseball Association. So all those in favor of removal, please put your hands up. Okay, and those opposed? Do we need the opposed up so we can get them? Let Miss Batten write them down. I better put mine up too. I believe the motion is defeated, but we'll let Ms. Batten confirm that. Okay, that motion is defeated. Thank you. So at the moment, it stays at the 50,000. Director Holmes?
Just maybe make a suggestion that in the future, when we look at regional grant and aids, that we hear the presentations from the people and thank them, and then not discuss them right away afterwards. Wait a week and discuss them the next week. I think that would,
It's
yeah.
definitely something to consider. Back to Wayne for continuing on with the presentation here.
And we'll go through the full-time equivalents that were brought forward. There was 8 of them. FTE 1 is a grant-funded position, is not impacted taxation, which was the senior energy specialist. FTE 5, which is a user-funded position for the scale attendant, does not affect taxation. Number 6, which is the cemeteries and parks clerk, that's a 6-month term position. Number 7, which is the electoral area coordinator, is a term position trial.
You question, Director Federico? And then a few hands on that side.
Thank you, through the chair. So term for coordinator, we're looking at just the last 6 months of this year after we go through third reading, or is that going to be like when they're hired to mid next year, hired trial for at least a year?
Staff?
Through the chair, it's a 1-year trial. So from the time they're hired, 1 year.
Okay, I seen a hand over here, Director Barkwell.
Yeah, it seems we went through this before getting to fire services manager. And that's one I've had second thoughts about. Could you reiterate what, I think it's when it was like nearly $9,000 for the District of Summerland, $30,000 contribution from the City of Penticton, just what they're going, our communities are going to get for this, because it sounded like it was a rural problem, that there's real issues with, and I don't deny it, that there's probably issues on fire halls, but I don't see that the municipalities need to be contributing here. Maybe try and persuade me?
To the CAO or?
I'd like to start first and then bring it over to Deborah. As far as the municipal portion, that has nothing to do with your fire halls. The position would also be working with Emergency 911 and Protective Services. That's the portion that each of the municipal directors municipalities would be asked to pay for. And I'll ask Deborah to elaborate.
Okay, over to Deborah.
That is exactly why there is a portion for 20% for emergency management, and if I got that right, is it 20%? Yeah, 20% and 15% for emergency 911 system. Our emergency 911 system has one person that knows that system inside out, and we do not have redundancy in that, and we need some redundancy and somebody who can back that system up if that person were to leave or become ill or be on vacation, that backs that system up. And from the emergency management side of the system, it's the first person that we can dispatch out to be on site and give us feedback on what's happening at site. It was be one of the major things that we would use them for, as well as support in planning and preparedness.
Okay, a follow-up to that, Director Barkwell?
So what does the person who's maybe has knowledge of the emergency 911 system, what do they need to know? I mean, as far as I know, we pay money to 911 and the phones are picked up. So what's our contribution here? What is, how do we work with that?
So we're responsible for all the technology that is throughout the regional district that connects us to the 911 system. So we have towers and we have equipment that makes that all work. And we're responsible for that equipment and making sure that that equipment is working, maintained, and any changes that need to be made. We do studies, we do go to site to do changes and upgrades and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of work involved in the 911 system from that perspective.
Okay, follow up.
And so who has that responsibility right now?
Sean Vaisler, our emergency manager of emergency services, sorry.
Okay, Director Holmes?
Yeah, I guess just overall, observing 8 new positions in a year is a lot. And every year there's a lot of new positions being created, it seems. And at some point we gotta say, we're not having any new positions this year. It's getting a little out of hand, I think, the number of new positions that are being created year after year.
Okay. Director Bush?
Yeah, so I totally agree with the Summerland directors. It's just too much money for me, or our area, especially for the area coordinator and the fire service manager. I don't know, maybe some of this stuff could just be contracted out. I don't know, there should be another way to do things. These 2 full-time employees are a lot of money.
Okay, just a comment. Director Taylor?
Just wondered what happens to the funding that some of the rural fire departments have been contributing to their own support manager?
CAO?
First of all, I'll answer that question. That will be eliminated. And so that will reduce that part of the budget. Just in regards to the number of employees, what I see this as a catch-up. There's been a lot of expectations in this organization, which is great. Last year, looking at the strategic priorities, we were 11,000 hours more, less capacity. So we had 11,000 hours of work requested that we had no capacity in doing. In one of those positions, the board actually, the electoral area directors asked for the electoral area administrator. That's a 1-year term position that if it doesn't work, that's not going, it has to come back to the board to approve. 2 of the positions are cost neutral. And it is expected that there's some major increase in capacity with this. I don't anticipate you receiving a lot of FTE increases year after year. There is a point where we've reached our, I would think our operative operations where we can't get any more efficient. It may be happening with new directives and downloading that something might come up. But as far as what this is concerned, the 94,000 that's in yellow, that's a grant. The 17,000 is actually a correction that happened in the year 2020, I believe, that we're just making sure that it should go through the board. As earlier I said, to be transparent. There was no transparency there. We're just catching it up. So if there's any concerns about the number of employees that we're asking for, the reason is the capacity. And you are going to see the capacity for strategic priorities coming up within the next 2 meetings. We're having a staff meeting to determine the capacity that we can do. And last year, we actually moved projects from 2025 to 2026. The ask for this year, I anticipate 26, 27, and 28. That's how much the wish list is. So that is without asking for specific new FTEs. That can't happen.
Okay, Director Watt, you have a question or comment?
More of a question. I think the CAO touched on much of it. Thank you for that. And again, just to make us all aware that we're doing very much like we did with the scoreboard, is we're having sober second thoughts on a holistic view of staff members. When it's presented to us, we see the justification, in fact, the need for them, and we approve them on their merits. And then afterwards, we look at it and go, oh, that's too many staff members. So I think it's worthwhile just remembering that when we were presented these and looked at them, they did make sense to us.
Okay, good point. Not seeing anything. Oh, Director Monteith, and then.
Thank you, through the chair. I constantly hear that we can't complete planning projects, but yet we have no planning staff requests. So I guess I'm curious to why that was not a consideration with the staffing.
CAO?
That's a good question. I shouldn't say that. Thank you for the question. One of the things that we are doing right now, as Suyas and Kermias knows, we are their contractor. We are right now, we're talking about, we'll be discussing with those 2 CAOs about doing an enterprise unit where we will look at them funding a complete employee. So right now, the board authorized, for instance, a new organizational health and safety officer, where we're not using current staff to supplement and help other municipalities. We're actually hired a 4th employee in HR to help them, and at no cost for the taxpayer. We will be looking at that also for information services. Based on some evaluations that we've done, we've got 1 full FTE working for Suyas and Kermias. If we can figure out a better contract between those 2 organizations, and hopefully maybe 2 others, we can have an extra one. There'll be something, if this works out, I'll be bringing something to the board with a request to get a new person without any extra cost. But we have increased planning. You're going to receive a new report, I believe, at the next board meeting, that shows how many projects that they do, the time frame, and that report's going to be on an ongoing basis. So for 2025, you will see average cost and time for each development permit. And I am on it. I know that there's an issue with the planning department, and we need to determine the best way to fix it. There are 3 types of issues that happen in planning. No, I'll say 4. And the 4th one is the most important. The first one are permits that are 100% right and they fly right through. The second one is permits that require some help. However, our staff will help, and that takes more time. And those that require that are completely wrong, and they could take double, triple the time. Those are the ones that affect all of your other projects. So, but staff has to work with them. And the 4th issue is when the planning department comes with a report stated, making a recommendation, and if the board doesn't like it, may bring it back 2 or 3 times. That is one of the reasons why they're not doing the work on a timely basis. You're going to receive reports when that happens. You're going to receive and say, okay, this is the consequence of you bringing it back. You can bring it back, and that's your prerogative, but there is a consequence with that. And
okay, Director Gettins.
Thanks, Chair. Just on a similar sort of vein of that conversation, I think too for planning, the past few years have been pretty unique with short-term rentals coming down, the SHMU regulations coming down, trying to make that work in a region that's so diverse. And maybe with the rural committee, I don't know what it's called, the new rural committee, maybe that'll help also expedite some of these decisions. But I think it's been an unusual few years for planning in my experience as well. So while there's the first three that you said, and I think you itemized that really well, like they're consumer-driven concerns, but when we have planning coming back over and over again, and we keep tweaking our direction, that's really impactful not only to their time, but also their morale and their work as well. So I just want to recognize that with planning, it's been a bit unusual.
Chair,
Good point. CAO?
one thing I want to add, we have an awesome planning department. They are dedicated. In fact, on Christmas Eve, I had to chase them home. They wanted to work right past the going home date. Why? Because they wanted to make sure that you received all the reports. You don't have a team that just is blind. They'll just do the bare minimum. They go and do above and beyond. And biggest issues, again, that number 4 item is when you bring back the short-term rentals was devastating to that department. The number of times that we had to pull them from the regular work. Planning department is the only department that core work is affected so dramatically when something happens to that department where they have to do it above work, because the core work is based on the economy. And that's why it's important that from now on in, you're going to start getting the time frame, how much work that they do, the time frame, and for those 3 different categories, so that you're aware that you have an awesome planning department. And I congratulate the dedication for that department and the senior manager.
Okay. I see some hands over this side. Director Taylor?
Yeah, I'd like to support the CAO's comments relative to the planning department and their dedication. I'd also like to just flag the whole SDR thing was devastating for the board as well, I think, in just seeing the interaction that we work through with staff. So sometimes, I think most times we get it right, sometimes we don't. And then it's a lot of extra work. Hopefully we can minimize those. I hope sunny skies ahead and we don't have as much work. I'd just like to go back to some of my colleagues' comments about reducing some of these things. And so I hear staff saying, we've got more time going out the door than we have people to do it. So frankly, the electoral area coordinator is the one thing that would help us as a board, but it's an extra. And certainly I see value in it. But if some of my colleagues would like to revisit that and cut that, well, okay, let's hear it. This is the time.
Okay, Director Barkwell?
We seem to have moved on from the fire services discussion, which seems to
All over the
be,
map.
might indicate the acquiescence to that additional expense, but if somebody wants to bring it back, I'll certainly be willing to revote on it. But I'm glad that planning has been brought up, because earlier in the year, and Mayor Holmes and I had a discussion all the way back from Asuyas about it, was the contractors for OCPs in the various regions. And what I didn't ask at the time, but now we're talking about planning, is why the heck couldn't we have a staff person for considerably less money than contractors who specialized in OCPs and worked on them, year after year after year, rather than bringing in these outside contractors. I think, and my memory might not be so good because it was 6 months ago, but it's a couple of $100,000 a year, I think, for contractors and planning for OCPs. And so I didn't get a chance to ask the question then, so I'm asking it now.
Slightly off topic, but we'll keep going. That was the theme. So.
Through the
CAO?
chair, capacity would be the first easy answer to that. Also, it's not a continuous work, so it doesn't mean it's not a full-time position in that it could be 3 years, 2 years, but it's a limited time frame. It's not ongoing. However, we get a lot of the contracts that you see are mostly from grants, and we received think it was about $150,000 a few years ago that is still being carried over because we haven't used them yet because we haven't done some of the projects that you just that are mandatory, like for the OCP or for the regional growth strategy. As far as the grants go, grants were restricted in contracts. We can't use staff to get the funds back. So that's something that the province, I think, needs to change, and that might be a good topic for SILGA, is that. So when you see contract, more than likely it's because of the grants.
Okay, I've got Director Roberts, and then I think we need to move on.
Thank you, through the chair. And as we digress a little bit into this conversation, I just wanted to bring up, I believe it was about 5 years ago, maybe even 6. I remember bringing up about the amount that we all provide, like whether or not you have planning or not. There was, for instance, Area G was paying $50,000, and it was a point where he said, with the ongoing OCP process, why don't we all, from the amount that we take, set aside a portion of all the money that we do for planning from each of our areas, and then have that set aside so that we have the ongoing OCP process. Because again, as it's been stated many times, it's supposed to be every 5 years and to be reviewed, but of course it's so-and-so is 20 years down the road, so-and-so is 25 years down the road. So it was about instituting a process through our budgeting that would just automatically set that aside. And that again would go along with having somebody dedicated, because I do think it would be a continuum if we're trying to fit within those timelines. Anyways, I was just trying to remember again the specifics around that vote way back when.
I don't recall it, but something to discuss in the future, probably. I'm going back to Wayne to continue on here.
The next section was program change requests. So the VRR stands for Vehicle Replacement Reserve. And so PCR 5 and 6 were declined by the directors. PCR 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 17 were deemed operational, and they were already included in the budget at the time of the workshop. PCR 16 was removed by the CAO before the workshop, and PCR 18 was declined by the directors. PCR 22 was declined by the director. PCR 30, the director scope changed, so an additional level of service, so it was no longer net neutral. All revenues from court bookings are being put into reserve. PCR 31 was declined by the director. PCR 32, the director modified the contribution level. PCR 33 is net neutral, no tax increase. And PCR 37 was removed before the workshop as the artifacts were no longer in storage. Were there any changes to PCR requests that would need to be discussed?
Not seeing any hands, so.
Appendix B. This was changes that were brought forward through a budget analysis and meetings with directors. So I don't know if we want to go through each one, or how would you like to go about this, Chair?
Yeah, that's probably, if they were done by directors, they'll raise their hand if they want to make another change or something. So let's just hold the page for just a couple of seconds and move on. Okay. Back one, if you would there, it just reminded me I'd seen to record mandatory fire inspection costs. that one's going to change. So to the CAO,
So, yes, that will change at second reading. As you know, the Office of the Fire Commissioner did a 180, and that is no longer something that we have to pay for. So that's going to be off the budget.
okay, so that will be a change for the second round probably. Director Gettens?
Yeah, I don't know if I missed something, but what do these numbers mean? I don't know what, like managing directors change for 23,000. I don't know what 1175216074 means.
Yeah, so those, sorry, through the chair, those are the services that are being affected. So the basketball court was Okanagan Falls Recreation.
So are all four of those numbers above that, about the basketball project?
For the basketball project, yes.
Okay, sorry, can you just go back one page then? I thought they're all different items. Okay, and then is there something about a pump track or is it a water pump? So I move forward?
Okay, so the first one was for the electoral area coordinator position. The second one is spin bikes with Similkameen Recreation. The third one was reallocating wages from 28 to 30 for projects that were not on the budget. The fourth one is the facility renovation at Skaha Road for the main corporate facility. Then the Olalla Reservoir project is for the Olalla water system. Oops, wrong way.
Direction.
Okanagan Falls is the basketball project. Okanagan Falls again for reallocating of wages. The Fire Commission was electoral areas. The Lions Park pathway again was Okanagan Falls. Or Area D, sorry, not Okanagan Falls. The metering project, it was there was one with the water systems, I believe it's Olalla. The pump upgrade was Narmada Water. And the building inspection is for the building inspection department.
Okay.
This was from electoral area director changes. So the first one was the Tulameen Rink Board project. I believe the second one was also area H. The third one is for the KVR geotechnical review, which I believe is area F. And then again for area D was the decrease in scope of the planning project for the cemetery. Area D as well, decreased the gazebo funding. Anarchist Mountain was to add some equipment purchases into the 5-year plan. I believe Willowbrook was the decrease of transfers to reserve. I believe 330 is Willowbrook as well. Yeah, it was, victim services, I believe. And let me just look that one up real quick.
For future, it wouldn't hurt just to have the
I'll put
area on those so we can
for sure
skim through them just a smidgen quicker.
Yeah, it was the increase to the Vassal Lake cleanup study. Yeah, society. The next one was a regional water treatment study, which was area I, approving the gas tax for the well study or regional water study.
Yeah.
Area A was removing a Soyuz wayfinding project. Area D was decreasing the scope of the pathway lighting project. Area D was moving the accessibility project into 2027. Area D was increasing some reserve transfers, and I believe Area D again for carrying forward the washroom project. And then this was some budget analysis that was done. We recognized that the LG cap funding in general government was not allocated. Number 2 is to get the operating reserve into policy compliance. Then the third one was to remove the temporary winter shelter program that we contribute to the city of Penticton because it technically is stopped in March of 26. And if it carries on, then we'll put it back in if the board so desires. 1,500, that's Willowbrook Fire. We had to remove some funding from there as it was fully recognized in Cleedon. And then the new water systems that came on board for Lakeshore Water, Vintage Views, and Heritage Hills, that's what the vehicle debt servicing is for.
There's a question on that one, Director Monteith.
Thank you. Can you go back to remove the observatory contract from Cleedon Fire Department? Because they have the contract with the observatory.
No, it was removing it from Willowbrook. So the chiefs have an agreement between the two, and Cleedon, I believe, is looking at keeping the full amount rather than giving Willowbrook some. So that'll be a discussion that the chiefs and the fire services manager will have to discuss whether they keep that in, but I had to recognize it so that the 5-year plan was correct.
Okay. So
It does not affect the
change.
Cleedon, it does not affect the Cleedon Fire Hall, it just affected the Willowbrook Fire Hall.
Okay, I just hope that anybody that's watching this video or following along are going to note that it's between Cleedon and Willowbrook, just not just Cleedon.
Okay.
I guess just the language here, just, yeah.
Okay.
Continue on.
So again, the vehicles debt servicing is for the 3 new systems that came on place. Then there was to bring services into compliance. So I did that through reserve transfers. I recognize the preliminary amount given by SIR. So that's another thing, a word of caution to the board is that we do not have the full SIR numbers or OBWB numbers. So that may affect the overall tax requisition once we get those numbers from those organizations.
So this is your best guess at the moment?
It's the preliminary numbers from SIR. I have not received anything from OBWB as of yet.
Okay.
Hopefully by second reading, I'll have the firm numbers in. And then the last one was to bring Similkameen Recreation into bylaw compliance. So this was Recreation Tulameen. To bring that one in bylaw compliance was the top one. The other 2 were housekeeping issues for the ability for us to transfer from reserve if needed. I noticed that one of the grants had an inflation increase on it, so I removed the inflation increase. And then we also had to capture some prior year deficits that we knew about. So that's it for the changes that the board hadn't seen before workshop. Now the request is for early approvals. We have to use caution that if these early approvals are accepted, you can't remove them before adoption. So these are the 3 FTEs that we are asking for early approval. And we'll need a decision from the board. The first one's the cybersecurity IT analyst.
Did we not do that at the last meeting? I thought we gave early approvals to these.
For first reading, it has to be approved, I believe.
Again? Okay. So looking for a motion, moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? Directors Bush and Monteith? That motion still carries. I'm assuming we're doing these one at a time. So
Yeah, so the early approvals for the program change requests were the ones that were deemed operational through information services. The extra request for the Loose Bay operator stipend, which affects Area C. The prescribed recreation trial, which should be net neutral, but it affects Karamias areas B and G.
Okay, so we need early approval on them too. So a mover for that. Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next one.
And then we have a couple area approvals for the capital funding requests that have been requested. So the first one is for the Skaha Road renovation.
Question, Director Federico, or?
No, I want to remove something off that list.
Okay, which one?
The rural projects area community design, because we have an alternate funding source for that one. So I don't want it coming out of taxation here.
So we don't need early approval for that then? Okay, so.
And then the next one was information services network infrastructure, and that affects everybody. The building inspection vehicle replacement does not affect taxation as it's completely through the vehicle replacement reserve.
Okay, so we need early approval on these with the exception of the area E one.
And there's just three more on the capital funding. So that's Similkameen Recreation, the floor refinishing of the, I believe it's a racquetball court, and the entrance accessibility. And then the asking for early approval on the equipment purchase because they had some fitness equipment that needs replacing immediately.
Okay, someone prepared to move those ones? Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Great, any opposed? That motion carries. And
that is it. I just wanted to remind the board that there's a project on regional trails that requires borrowing. So if that project is going to be continuing to be carried into the budget, that assent action will be needed taken in 2026 to complete that project.
okay,
And between first and second reading, I will have to do some funding adjustments so that everything, there's no deficits in the 5-year plan. But I will bring those forward as well at second reading.
okay. So we're looking for a motion to give this first reading and overall. Is you making that motion or you want to talk discussion first? Go ahead, Director Monteith.
Thank you through the chair. So I'm uncomfortable with the Cleveland Park and Recreation budget showing, I guess, departure funds in the future because that has not gone through the commission. And is that possible to remove that from like 2026 or 27, 28, 29? Like it's in the future planning, but just even going out now to community with financial planning now, that's the conversation, not today, not to 2027 tax or 2026 taxes. So I'd like to move that future conversation to the future, not right now.
Not sure on how that works, but CAO?
I believe that's a 2027 budget. So yes, it can be taken off without affecting 2026 taxes at all.
Yeah.
So that as long as the board can adopt the budget as presented with the exception of removing that 2027 amount.
Okay. Mr. Director Coyne.
Yeah, so to CAO, I guess, would that mean you just put for the other 4 years of the 5-year financial plan, it's going to be zeros?
Until the board officially makes the changes, yeah, it'll be right across the board. It'll be zero. So it'll be changed, not just to 2027.
Left blank.
It'll be left blank. This is an issue that I'll be discussing at the CEO update later in the meeting concerning the consent agenda and how the board adopts it. So that we will be discussing this, but it doesn't affect the 2026 at all.
Okay. And Wayne, you
Through the
comment?
chair, just for clarity, what's being referenced is on the Cleveland Recreation, there's a park improvements earmarked funds for 27, 29, and 30, which require borrowing, and the director is asking for that to be removed from first reading. I don't know if that clears it up.
Yeah. Director Monteith?
Thank you. They're just capital projects that the community has not even digested yet. So to have it there now, I don't have the answers. It's a really unfair position to put me in and the community. So until we actually get going down that process, I don't think it should appear right now. That's why I'm asking for it to be removed.
Okay, so we'll include that in the motion when we do it. Director Federico.
Thank you, through chair. Just a housekeeping item. When we're in our operational financial plan and you have our numbers, but then you have participating municipalities and electoral areas, Under OBWB, Okanagan Basin Water Board, you have G and H listed. So minor housekeeping, but they're not, unless they want to pay into the OBWB, then they're listed on there. So just minor housekeeping.
Sometimes those do get overseen at times. Director Taylor.
Just want to clarify one of the comments under electoral area director changes where there was entries over the coming years of 25, 20, 15, 10, and 5. That was actually area D, ECDev. And you gave it to somebody else. And I guess at this point, from my perspective, I'd like to move the motion.
Okay.
And we can have further discussion, further changes at a later date.
Okay, so that would be with the removal of the area I deals. Seconded, it's on the floor. Any discussion on it? We've had a bit this morning. Anything else? Director Federico.
Thank you. One more quick question. And it's not any of these changes, but under general governance, there's a special project for development and amenities bylaw. Over the next 4 years, it's a $435,000 price tag. So just wondering what that is, who's doing that work, and why that high of an expense.
I'm not sure who can answer that, but staff.
Sorry, I believe that one is grant funded, but
Through the chair, that's the development costs amenities bylaw project that was brought on by planning. I believe 2 years ago, we have the grant funding for it. In the operational, that was another one that we caught between now and second reading it, you'll see that there's a grant funding for the exact same amount in the general government, so that will lower general government a little bit.
Okay. Director Monteith?
Thank you through the chair. So I feel like a broken record. So since 2000, and when I was first elected, Area D and I split, became Area I. Some of the bylaws still have not been fixed, and I'm still stuck in these bylaws with Area D, which, you know, I don't mind so much, but the costs are there, and it's like specifically the unsightly bylaw. There's others that were sort of dragged through with costing. Area I is paying for expenses that are actually Area D in that split. So are they going to be fixed in 2027? Like we're, you know,
2026, hopefully,
well,
but
it feels like it's been ongoing, and this should have been done with the separation of the two. And then I have another question.
CAO?
Thank you, Chair. So with OK Falls becoming a municipality, answer is yes, because you're not just looking at Area D anymore. You're looking at Area D, OK Falls, and Area I.
Yeah. Director Monteith, following up?
Nope, different question, if that's okay.
Sure.
So every year I bring up the conversation about the external organizations that we have, we do work with. So specifically the Okanagan Basin Water Board, where we're just collecting money and then giving them a check, but yet it's costing us significantly, specifically $26,000. So how is that logic determined? Like I know as a board, we looked at it and philosophically we agreed to a process, but it feels expensive for just cutting them a check. So, yeah, and the library is another example. Like there's several external organizations that were, yeah, there's a heavy administration costs, and I guess I'm curious to why.
CAO?
I had a meeting with the deputy CFO just yesterday, not specific on that specific one, but overall, what you're talking about is the administration fee, which the board policy was adopted a number of years ago, and I committed that there will be a review of that, which in 2026 you will be receiving a review. The way that all the distribution is done right now is 100% based on the board's policy. If the board wants to change it at the time that the review is submitted, you can make that recommendation. And that also, it will show you why we're recommending with the different costs. It's not just one number. When you're looking at that one check, there's a lot of work in the background, everything from bylaws to payroll to HR. And when Wayne and and I'll give you the recommendation. You can ask them to have special changes if you wish. One of the things I brought in was that the board has a class 5, which means that you can override your own policy and reduce it before the budget is made. So there are a couple like that, and that can be also injected in the new policy.
Before I go to Director Taylor, I would just remind everybody, as soon as you start adjusting one, you adjust every single budget that goes on. If you lower one, you're raising all the others. Keep that in mind. You got to collect $1 million or whatever that number is. You still got to collect that $1 million. You lower one, everybody else's goes up. Just saying. So, Director Taylor.
Yeah, I'd just like to flag BC Transit as one of those areas that I think I'd really like to see us get more regular oversight of how that service is delivered. And I know we've started to have those conversations, but from what I can see, we don't really get much from BC Transit. And in terms of information on which to manage that service and our expense to it, and as well, what we spend internally on our staff to manage that. So.
CAO?
I feel like my office is bugged because I did have a meeting with the managing director in charge of transit, and they have been asked, there will be asked to come in and do a report at least twice a year. And I've asked the managing director to ask BC Transit to do an audit of the BC Transit, especially OK Falls, because that's going to be split and no longer part responsibility for this board. So that is going to be coming in the near future.
Okay. Anything further here before we call the question? Director Roberts.
Yeah, thank you to the chair. And again, appreciate the fact that the CAO is meeting with the deputy CFO. Again, some of the stuff that I discussed with Wayne yesterday, things that were itemized kind of like to a wrong department in regards to staffing costs versus, one going to public works rather than going to finance. And then on the other top of it, being more money than what is previously been used. So there was just numbers that have been thrown out, and I look forward to the reviews and the ability to find some of that cleaned up. And on that vein, following up from Director Fedrigo, it says, I found another place buried away in my budget that had me putting money to OWB, OBWB. And again, I'm not a part of that at all. So I'm wanting to make, I'm finding a lot of these little inconsistencies, things that we're not connected with or staffing that we're not. And it seems like a lot of times we're having to go with a fine tooth comb. And as the chair was stating, yes, it might be $1 million here and it goes up there, but when you're an area that doesn't even pay into a particular service or have that service, it's a little disconcerting. So I was hoping to be able to see that today on the field, some of the stuff that I had come across, but I will work with Wayne in the days coming in regards to some of these issues. Thank you.
Okay, Director Monteith.
Thank you through the chair. Director Roberts, I completely agree with you. I think as an electoral area director, it's not an easy position to be in because there's so many shared services and stuff. But I mean, I'll give you another great example. Apex pays for BC Transit, but there's no bus that goes up there. So, I mean, there's lots of anomalies that are in our budgets, and it's really frustrating, and it's really hard for taxpayers to understand that. So I absolutely agree with you.
Okay, just keep in mind regional services, everybody pays. Individual services are specific to the area. And the one Director Monteith referred to is a regional service. So you may not always see a benefit. The same thing happens down my neck of the woods. I don't have a bus that goes up the Anarchist, but they're paying for it. It happens throughout the region, but everybody contributes. Director Fedrigo, and then I'm calling question, I think.
Perfect. Thank you, the chair. Really simple. Where, what service bylaw is business license income going to? Because I didn't quite see that when I was combing through.
CAO.
Business licensing, it would go to the building department. So wherever the expense goes, the revenue goes. So now, in some cases, some of you have business licenses, in some cases you don't. Those that have the business licenses, your revenue and expenses should offset. Those that don't have business licenses and there's a bylaw issue, the taxpayer is paying for that cost.
Specific to that area.
Specific to the area. So each area, to be fair, is paying for the net cost. And usually the business licenses should offset the revenue. The board last year adopted an FTE for a bylaw coordinator contingent on business licenses being implemented. We're just starting the process, so we haven't authorized that position to be hired yet. So currently we just have the bylaw people that we haven't, which one of them retired, by the way, and I'll be talking about that at the CAO update. Does that answer your question?
Director Fedrigo?
Yes, thank you. Just pondering if it would make sense for it to be a separate service bylaw and what that would do. If because it's so complicated with the different areas paying into it, does that then make it a little more, not so much transparent, but easier to see?
CAO?
So we're restricted as a regional district in just creating a service. What you just stated would require a service establishment bylaw, which also would require then public assent. So we're putting it in where we can based on the service establishment bylaw. But we're trying to make it so that each electoral area pays its fair share. Where they get the revenue if they got business licenses and expense, and also if they don't have business licenses, you get the expense and funded by the taxpayer rather than the business license.
Okay. Well, that's it. Intricacies in the budget for sure. Seeing, Director Roberts, a hand, and then I'm calling question.
Okay, to follow up on that, I still have challenge when I don't have business licenses and I'm not incurring cost because I don't have any way to, I don't have a complaint mechanism. I don't have a bylaw that deals with those particular issues around business licenses. And so figuring out why I'm paying into something or paying for things that I don't have, I have a challenge coming to understand, because again, I do know that I have the ability to put in business licenses. But again, I haven't had any complaints. I haven't had any issues in my area. That's why I didn't jump into the SDR thing, because at this moment in time, it's not an issue. So I do find it problematic that for something that I'm not involved in, don't have bylaws for, that I will be paying for.
CAO?
As far as the short-term rental and bylaw costs, you don't have any, if you don't have any expenses, you're not paying for anything. This is a unique issue, but the province threw this at us so that we had to come up with some solution. And the solution is, in most cases, if you have a bylaw in your area where bylaw enforcement comes in there is a charge. But as far as the short-term rental, that is different, where that was a direct charge. So the bylaw officer would charge when there is an issue in your area. So if you don't have an issue in your area, because even though you don't have a bylaw, we still may get a call, bylaw may get a call or a complaint. And then we'd have to go and explain or talk, whatever has to happen. So as of right now, you don't have any complaints, you don't have any costs.
Okay. So we've got first reading on the floor with the amendment to remove area I's. A few items. Calling the question on it. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Directors Bush and Monteith. And that motion carries. Moving on to legislative services, Sage Mesa Water System Assent Vote question. CAO.
Hi.
Did I miss
No,
something?
yes, sorry. There's a E3.
E3? Oh, I did. I just seen the 5-year financial plan. Go ahead, E3, sorry.
Thank you.
I threw myself and you for a loop.
Yes, thank you. So the purpose of this report is to purchase a vehicle of up to $46,000 for information services, which will enhance the service delivery to the RDOS facility and customer outside of the 3 primary Penticton buildings. As the Regional District knows, we are currently in 3 different areas. However, right now, the IT department will just walk to one building to another. One of the things that we've had expanded is services to the 8 fire departments, where they were not part of us. Essentially, they were left on their own. They are now fully part, 100% integrated with our IT. So these IT individuals have to drive from anywhere from Tulameen to Anacus Mountain and everywhere in between. This way, with this vehicle that we were proposing, recommending to purchase, they can bring in all the equipment and go from one place to another without having to scramble and scavenge an extra vehicle that's back here. And usually it might delay some of the maintenance work because they don't have the vehicle to drive. So we're asking for this. And if you have any questions, I've got the CFO and the Deputy CFO here to answer questions.
Okay, looking for a motion on this one. Moved, seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Start with Director Monteith and then Federico.
I feel like I've got all the questions. I got a question from a resident wanting to know about whether this vehicle would be a hybrid or electric, because the new location may not be set up with electric yet. So what is the investment in the long term of it?
Good question that I'm not sure we're knowing yet, but Wayne?
Yes, this vehicle is not a hybrid or an electric. It's a Ford Maverick. And that's due to the need to go to Princeton, and it could be in winter conditions. So we elected not to go electric at this time for that one.
Okay. Director Federico?
Thank you to the chair. Do we have like a fleet listing of, because it seems like every meeting somebody wants a vehicle. So like, do we have a general list? And I'm guessing as we go through our asset management, they'll be listed there, but it just feels like there's vehicles all over the place. And then why would each department specifically be asking, supposed to just like general admin fleet that they can use? And if that has to be 12 cars, fine. But it just seems, I don't know, we seem bombarded with purchasing vehicles. So just a streamline of that.
I'll go to staff.
Sure. We definitely have a list. It is quite lengthy. In this particular situation, this vehicle, obviously, if it was sitting and someone else needed a vehicle to take it somewhere, we would offer that up as well. But this one would also be outfitted with racks and things that to carry the particular IT equipment. In the other cases, we have actually three, we call them floater vehicles. They're the ones that can just be signed out by anyone. And they are often all booked out. So we try to manage that, trying to figure out what's the tipping point of needing another one. We certainly don't want them sitting, not being used, but we have the three, including the one fully electric vehicle, and the other two are hybrids. But we do our best to monitor their usage. And the 4-day work week actually has given us another little advantage, because we also know when certain staff are off on Mondays or Fridays that have vehicles that they normally use, then those vehicles become available. So we're trying to incorporate that into the fleet usage.
Okay, CAO.
So one reason why we have so many vehicles is we have 165 services, of which 12 are water systems, 2 are sewer. So we have to have staff to be able to drive to these water systems. And there's a lot of distance between one service to another. So,
Yeah, we are spread out very much so. Director Bush.
Yeah, so I'm more in favor of this than a $50,000 scoreboard.
Oh, I think this one is coming out of reserves, but I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now down to legislative services, the Sage Mesa water question.
Thank you. The purpose of this is to standardize wording for the question for the upcoming Sage Mesa Water System Assent voting opportunity. And I'll let the corporate officer explain why this is coming back.
Okay, over to Tracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason it's coming back is we are working our way through the process to hold the referendum. It came to our attention that we had failed in including a couple of words in the question and in reference to the bylaw citation. And then additionally, that we typically use a different standard of question, and we wanted to match that one as well. So nothing has changed with the amount we're asking for or the bylaw numbers or anything in that effect. It's just basically standardizing the question.
Okay. Go to Director Gettens.
Thanks to the chair. Yeah. This, I understand this is a housekeeping and it's just to make it more clear as Ms. Batten explained. So I'll go ahead and move the administrative recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Not seeing any hands. We'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Director Bush is opposing that one. Motion still carries. Down to F2, Skaha Estates Reserve Fund, CAO.
Thank you. As stated earlier, we are taking over the Skaha Estates water system, and this is to establish a reserve fund for the newly acquired Skaha Estate Water Reserve, and the recommended motion is on the screen.
Okay, direction on this one, Director Taylor?
I'll move both.
You're moving both of them? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Not seeing hands. We'll again call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? That motion carries. Down to CAO reports.
Thank you. Just a few things. A few meetings ago, the board created an action item regarding an MOU for 100 homes in the city of Penticton. Staff has written the MOU and submitted it to the city of Penticton. Right now, I understand that the individuals that we're talking to are off right now and they will be back within a week or so. The objective is to have the council for city of Penticton authorize it and bring it back to the board for final authorization before third reading. And I'm hoping that that can happen. So it is in process and we're just waiting. And Penticton has very efficient staff and I'm sure that they'll get back to me when they come back from holidays. Any questions on that?
Not seeing any hands at this point.
So thank you. Next one, I mentioned earlier that we did have a retirement in the for bylaw. So right now we are operating with one bylaw and officer. We will be posting the position by union rules. It has to go in-house, but it will also eventually go out. So just a heads up on that. If you see the posting in the paper. And one final change in the process of trying to continue in improving efficiency. One of the things that the board does on a regular basis is do the consent agenda. And for the parks commissions within the consent agenda, for them, there's action items. So going forward, starting at the next meeting on these action items, you still will look at consent agenda, but we're going to be pulling out any action items and split them up into core work, work that requires additional funds or capital work, and also work that requires staff time. So it's been an issue for going on. A lot of times it's anticipation because they anticipated that because it went through the consent agenda, that it's automatically accepted. Well, in those action items, there could be anything from borrowing money for a major capital project to a huge amount of staff time. So that gives you a heads up. That's going to be a change in how I see the agenda going forward. And those action items will be in the new electoral area committee. because they only affect the electoral areas. If there's any concerns or questions, please let me know regarding this change.
Okay. Director Taylor?
Yeah, the whole Parks and Rec Commission structure to me is in need of attention, and I think this will help highlight that. Because I do think we've told our commissions to make recommendations, and their relationship with staff isn't really, and the board, it's not working. So I think this will help to shine a light on some of that, and I also hope that our executive continues to look at that bylaw and those commissions and try to find ways of improving them so that we're not asking them to do something that isn't really working.
Okay. Director Gettens?
Thanks to the chair. I actually, just to follow up on Director Taylor, I find it interesting how different each Parks Commission is, and how that and how work is brought through, and the role of that commission. I know in Area F we are quite different, so we don't. Excuse me, our commission wouldn't put action items. I feel like that's my role, to bring that to the board and put forward a motion in order to work with staff and that kind of thing. And I recognize it's quite different, and I think trying to figure out some consistency so the expectations of citizens is the same, because I've like with Area F, like I hold the responsibility for the budget and the work and the recommendations, and the commission is advisory, much more like our APC. So I think some of that would be helpful to get that worked out.
Okay. Good points. Anything further, CAO?
Yes, we're going to talk about strategic priorities, and just an update on, I made a commitment to the board regarding the board action items, or just board know where we're at, and Mr. Hatch is here to explain where we're going with this. Mr. Hatch?
Okay, over to you.
Thank you so much. To the chair. So in late November, we started tracking inquiries, questions. Those came through board meetings, discussions, through emails and conversations with the CAO and senior leadership. So we started, I was here in December and I gave a quick verbal update on some different action items and such, and we need to formalize that. So at the next meeting, we'll be providing a report. There's currently 14 items on this list. We're going to be categorizing them into action items that are in progress by staff, completed and unresolved, and we'll provide some context so that you'll be able to see that. So we'll move away from verbal updates on that port and start doing that at the next meeting. So that's a quick update on that. Okay, so strategic planning. So now that we're into December, we've closed off our 2025. In 2025, staff tracked 179 different projects. These are outside of core work, outside of operational needs, all of the extra projects and initiatives that were going on. We had staff had the opportunity between March, when the plan was adopted, until yesterday. We had the final opportunity to update any projects for last year. There were 138 projects completed, resulting in a 91% completion rate. So it's on par with last year and where we're at. There are 39 actions that remain incomplete. Many of those will continue into 26. They are continuing. Some faced internal factors, external factors. Some were paused and are being revisited. So staff are working through that list of 39 to determine what will continue into 2026 and which may stop. There could be reasons for that too. Those projects that did not finish had an average completion of 58%. So there were a substantial amount that started and stopped quickly, or started and progressed and stopped again at some point. So staff are addressing that for 2026. Some of those delays had to do with scope. And one of the things we did not do in 2025 was develop a scope for a lot of these projects on a formal basis across the organization. Each department and their work plans developed scope, created budgets, created work plans based on resources, but was not formalized across the organization. So for 26, we are requiring scope to be presented so that when we are working interdepartmentally right? So one department is the lead for a project, but needs the support of finance or information services or legislative services and other departments. They are aware what the scope of the project is going to be. We faced a lot of projects where the scope had scope creep. It changed partway through the year. We did not adjust our resource allocation, and therefore other priorities came up. We moved on to those, and those other projects may have stalled out. So we are requiring that scope to be moving forward. So staff are working, CAO mentioned this earlier, having final meeting next week, and we'll be presenting this the first meeting in February, just finalizing that. I just want to highlight that we have a very similar amount of hours allocated to projects. The amount of projects on the list is very similar as well, close to that 179. So we are confirming that. There are currently about 50 projects that were deferred and are added onto what we're calling a holding list. That's the projects that are not currently on a draft work plan. So the board will have an opportunity to look at what the staff are presenting as well as the holding. And that's where the opportunity to make adjustments to the work plan is available.
Okay, CAO?
And this for 2026, the board's going to have some say in the priorities. So we can't, there's 9 electoral areas. You can't do all 9 at the same time, but there will be ability for you as at the electoral area committee to determine which you consider most important and go and start the project first.
Okay. Anything further? That's it.
Thank you.
Back to the CAO.
That's it. Thank you.
That's it. All right, moving on to other business, chair's report. Not much new in the new year yet, other than I would wish everybody a happy new year and hope everybody's 2026 is, what would be the word? It's not necessarily, most of the time you say you have prosperous, but it's not necessarily, let's say it's successful 2026. So director's motions, anything there? Not seeing any. Perfect. Board members' verbal updates. We usually do the representations at the second meeting in the month, do we not? I just noticed that on here now. So we will, with the consent of the board, we'll put that off until the next meeting. But I will ask if there's anything from board members to report from your individual areas that you wanted to mention. Director Taylor?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks to staff on 2 areas. One, the budget. I think we're at first reading, and I think from my perspective anyway, a lot of improvements. The reserve accounts being noted, the provision of Excel spreadsheets. I still find it a really tough sled to review pretty near 50 accounts, 50 services, with many of them have capital accounts as well. So I'm challenged by that, but I have really appreciated staff's patience and willingness to consider change. Also like to just say thanks. We've had a number of conversions, 3 systems, 2 water systems and a sewer system. Again, ton of work, and I'd like to say thanks. And we also had a referendum, and you know, naively, I thought that would be in the rearview mirror at this point. And don't laugh at me. I know I'm here to provide entertainment. I am hopeful we'll get this done this year. So, you know, end of the day, from my perspective, last year was really busy. I really appreciated staff input and assistance. I have a feeling that this coming year is probably going to be busier or worse, however you want to look at it. And anyway, looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Director Monteith and then Federico.
Thank you, through the chair. I wonder if this is a great opportunity for the regional district to kind of do like a year in review, to kind of share some of our success stories, because I think we've got a lot done in 2025. So I guess just putting the bug that might be a good story or a good comms release.
Okay. Director Federico?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you to the organizers of our polar bear dip. It was a chilly day and the brave souls who went in the lake. But our organizers, we have one individual, Will, in our community who puts in a ton of time and effort, as well as our firefighters who are doing the background work and then on scene during the day. It's an awesome way to kick off the year. So many thanks to them for their work.
Okay. Seeing no other hands here, looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned, and we will move straight into the new Committee of the Whole, which Director Watt is going to chair. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair Pendergraph. And assuming we are ready to roll into this, I would call the meeting to order and ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved, seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. And moving directly into item B, which is our artificial intelligence usage policy, I will refer to our CAO, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to ensure regional district policies are relevant and reflect current practices, and to clarify and provide guidance on appropriate use of the AI for staff, elected officials, and contractors. Staff's here to answer questions. So the recommended motion is that the artificial intelligence usage policy attached to the January 8th, 2026 administrative report be forwarded to the January 22nd, 2026 Board of Directors meeting for consideration of adoption.
Is there a presentation?
Yes, staff's here to answer questions. No presentation. There is? Thank you. Go for it. Yes, there is. Yes.
Okay. There we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark O'Coin, the Legislative Services Coordinator here at the RDOS. We're also joined online today by Mike Moody. He's our interim manager of information services, and he'll be able to answer any more technical questions any of you may have, and I will be happy to direct him to do so. So we're here today to have a look at the initial draft of the artificial intelligence usage policy. It's attached to your agenda, so hopefully you've had a chance to look over it, but we're going to hit some highlights and just talk about it in general. And it's an opportunity for questions and feedback before we bring it back for actual adoption, hopefully at the next meeting. So initially just wanted to touch on AI in general. Obviously, it's a very new, emerging, very quickly evolving technology. It can do a remarkable number of things in a remarkably short amount of time. We get into more of the details in the report, but just kind of briefly touching on what it's capable of doing. Obviously, machine learning, the natural language processing, computer vision, which is more of the images and video, and robotics and automation. And there are an incredible number of tools that are available to do these things with. We're going to mainly focus on Copilot today because that's what the policy is based around. But just as a point of reference, there's obviously ChatGPT, Gemini, and many, many other tools. It seems like there's a new tool every day, so it's hard to keep on top of. But we are looking to get a starting point for how we'd like it used within the organization. And in looking at how it's to be used, we did do a pilot project with Copilot here in the organization. It ran from June to July of last year. There were 20 users involved in the project, mostly managers, and there were some select staff as well. So it was a range of departments to kind of get a feel of how it can work in various ways in various areas within the organization. And the feedback from just that 1 month period was that there were over 7,000 minutes saved on various tasks, email, document creation. The report breaks into more detail, but just overall, that's the sort of areas we were looking at and the sort of gains that were found. There estimate for the yearly productivity gain just for the people involved in the project without going beyond into extended use, which this policy would be designed for, is over $90,000, and that's just for each year. And there is an expectation that as users get more used to using it, they get more comfortable with it, they refer to it more, that those efficiency and productivity gains would only increase. So just touching on some of the highlights of the proposed policy itself, what we're looking to do is establish clear guidelines for the responsible use of generative AI within the organization. It also outlines the responsibilities of everyone involved, from the board to the CAO, to our information services department, department managers, and the users of the tools themselves. So as part of the policy, Copilot is the only authorized AI tool. The reasoning behind that is that Copilot stays within our system. It doesn't go out to the public domain, which keeps our data safer. It reduces the risks of any breaches, and it keeps the ownership of the data involved within our organization. It doesn't go anywhere else. So we go through the acceptable uses and the prohibited uses, acceptable being more along the drafting of documents and correspondence, assisting with routine kind of tasks, and then prohibited uses being uploading personal and confidential information and using the output from the tools without human verification. That's a very important step. You can see that with the various tools out there, some of it is more accurate than others, but so it's always worth having someone in there to make sure that what's coming out is actually accurate and what we want to say. And as part of that, anytime an output uses an AI tool, the policy would require that it is attributed accurately, and which would include the name of the tool, which at this point would just be Copilot, and then who was involved in the review and editing of the document. So that's to promote both the transparency of the use and to ensure that we are keeping people in the loop and not just relying on what is being produced. As part of the policy, there's a requirement that all users must complete training so that everybody knows what they're doing with the tools, and that the policy is to be reviewed annually to reflect changes in the technology and changes in how we may want to use it. So at this point, it is more of a narrow focus with just using Copilot. There's a possibility that we could expand in the future, but that's not where we want to start. The idea basically right now is to get these guidelines in place so that the organization can benefit from the efficiency and productivity gains while also protecting the organization from risk and to promote the transparent use of AI within the RDOS. And that is it for now. So if there's any questions, happy to take those now.
Any questions? Director Rodrigo?
Thank you to the chair. In the policy, there is reference to contractors, but not a lot. So how are you going to work with our consultants and contractors to make like what programs they're using, what information we give them, are they allowed to put into systems that they're using? Like what kind of oversight do we have on external bodies?
Steph?
So I think the main point at this stage would just be that if they are using RDOS data, they would be ruled by this policy. If they're doing work outside of our system, they would be governed by their own rules. But if they're getting into our data and using our systems, then they would have to abide by this. Mike, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, on your comment, Mark, Yes, for outside contractors, there is the odd time that an outside contractor may actually be logged into our network. If we've given them access in that regard, they would have to adhere to our policy guidelines. If they're outside our organization, we are probably not going to be giving them, in the first place, any personal information that could somehow get up into the public domain. So contractors on the outside, we would definitely have to limit their access to specific types of data or specific types of RDOS data.
Thank you. Director Monteith?
Thank you through the chair. I just want to flag some of the software programs that staff use. I'm going to use Canva as an example. It has a built-in AI as well. So it's not Copilot. So that's right away an example of something that needs to be looked at. So maybe consider looking at other software programs that are used to make sure that their AI is going to be as secure as what you're proposing.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I might let Mike handle that one.
I wasn't, what was the program called, Director Monteith?
Thank you. Just one example is Canva, which I know staff use to create the recreation program. So there, and I'm certain there's other external software programs that are used that have AI built into it as well. So just making sure that those are equally as secure.
Okay, we do have the ability to block specific types of artificial intelligence programs at our firewall. I would have to do an inventory. That would be one program. I wasn't aware of that. Some that do have built-in AI, some, I'll take an example. There may be a program that uses ChatGPT as part of their, as a bolted into their program. We have already blocked ChatGPT at the firewall so that staff would not be able to use that function. So we could do something similar. We would have to do an evaluation of the AI built into that program.
Director Monteith, that's good.
Funny you asked that because I was just outside talking to Eric about it. That's just one. I mean, Adobe is got AI embedded in it now. If you use a Google search, it's embedded in there. I understand where we're going, but I'm going to caution that if we go too far with this right now, we may limit ourselves to a very small suite of opportunity here. And so just caution there. I can't, until you guys work all that out, I would be reluctant in supporting this right now.
Thank you for the comments. Director Monteith?
So Director Coyne, you nailed exactly what I was sort of hinting at, that maybe creating a policy that's very specific on one type of AI versus recommending that as an organizational recommended program, but recognize that there are other external opportunities because to remove vital programs that we've been using internally could be detrimental. And that would actually cost more staff time to find a new program. Like we're just sort of spiraling. So acknowledging, Adobe was another example I was thinking of, but I couldn't recall the name at the moment. But, there's lots of others. So just, I guess, leaving some leniency to whether something is internally highly secure or whether it's just informational based or, just sort of opening the door to staff to be able to use other programs, I think is going to be really important.
Staff have a reply?
Definitely hear you on that for sure. I think the main goal at this point is the protection of the organizational data, and that's kind of the intention with using Copilot. As Mike was saying, I think we can certainly look at those areas as well. I don't know if Mike has any thoughts on that.
Mr. Moody?
There may be several different areas that we have to look at, that's for sure. The issue with AI is it's growing and there's a new one invented every week. And it's virtually impossible to keep up on that. And if I look back in history at when the internet first became available to the general government services, there was the oh, we shouldn't be using this website or we shouldn't be using that website. And it was at the point where it was impossible to keep up with trying to block websites. We may run into the same issue with artificial intelligence, but the main focus on this policy was to make sure that any information that RDOS employs internally on the network are going out, and like if they're using, I'll use ChatGPT as an example. It's a very well-known AI platform. A lot of people use it. You can take a picture of your house and redesign my front of my house and it'll give you a picture. But if you're an internal employee at the RDOS and you're uploading a voters list to do some kind of analysis, you're releasing information into the public domain. That information would be stored on a server outside of the confines of Canada. Currently, our Microsoft 365 tenant, our security perimeter around the RDOS data sits on servers only in Canada. And we want to make sure that we continue to do that. There are programs, Canva is one of them. I realize that it may have an AI component, and Adobe as well. There are others, and it's going to continue to grow. But we're going to try to be diligent to make sure that we can filter data so that it does not get out into the public domain. And that was one of the reasons why we went forward with a co-pilot only for internal RDOS staff.
Thank you, Director Coyne. You had something further?
Yeah, I just want to say I do fully encourage and support the use of AI. It's it's an extremely useful tool. But as Director Monteith and I were just noticing, the closed captioning for this is created through AI. So, I mean, it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. So, careful.
Yep.
Thank you, Director Federico.
Thank you to the chair. And just listening to Mr. Moody speak there, is it possible that the policy could more outline if you're going to use specific data that it can only go through Copilot, but then if you're doing other documentation, it could go through some of the other ones. So instead of just while you're here, you can only use this one, just kind of filter out what data can go where. Because like limiting those guys on Canva, if it's just a quick, like they put in a couple bullets and they're like, oh, I need to rewrite this. There's no personal info on there, but it can be helpful in the moment. Supposed to shut in, like, then you have to move out of Canva. You've got to move into Copilot to put in like rewrite It's a Beautiful Day, like something simple that isn't that data driven. So if we can see in here where it's a bit broader for what can be used, but then just that specific piece to if you put personal data on anything other than Copilot, that's where the means of like firing or being talked to with those strict penalties. Then I think it gives that balance between making sure that data stays only on one, but then also giving some leeway to some other programs.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we can look at and would either be included when we bring it back for adoption, or there'd be an explanation as to why we wouldn't be including that.
Follow up?
Follow up, yes, thank you. Sorry, and one more quick thought on that is, have we done an inventory of what each of the departments are already using to get an idea of what programs might need some flexibility, and then just be able to work kind of from that list as well?
To staff?
I'm not aware if we have. Mike, I don't know if you are.
No, we don't have an inventory as far as I know.
Director Monteith.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. I guess I'm curious to why we're still using WebEx when we have Teams. And is there not a savings to get rid of that subscription?
I can speak to that point. We are currently looking at just using Teams exclusively. We have have it on the to-do list to do an evaluation of Teams Premium, which is the version that would do basically what WebEx is doing right now. And the reason we're doing that is twofold. One is for basic functionality, so it's a common platform, easily trainable, as well as the cost WebEx is prohibitive going forward in the future. And that is something I have on my to-do list for my IT staff to work through in the following months in 2026, early 2026.
Thank you for the reply. Let's make sure also that we keep this to what we're looking at for our policy for right now. Director Bockwell, you had a question?
Certainly, it appears that this is going to have to be an evolving kind of a document, just as Mike was saying, at the early stages of the internet, it was really hard to anticipate the problems that are going to arise from it. I was just wondering, and it was sort of raised but not really answered by Director Monteith, if an employee decides to put in a query to Google for comparison purposes, say, and they use the AI answer, does this policy address that? Can you still just use the AI answer you get from Google? And I thought I could have a second question. The biggest savings was on email. Could you briefly explain how you save a lot of time with email? It might be helpful for all of us.
Mr. O'Coin.
I'll take the first one, and then Mike, if you want to take the second part.
Sure.
I don't think it currently touches on like the AI summary, but I think it would fall under the same idea as whatever is generated through a direct back and forth with an AI tool as needing to be verified. Because I know I've definitely seen AI summaries which are obviously wrong. I've seen AI summaries which I really hope are right, but then cannot find any confirmation anywhere else. So I think it's the important part of that would still be making sure that what you're making use of is accurate. And if it doesn't specifically touch on that in the policy now, I'm sure we could add that in.
Dr. Parkwell, you're good? The first part? Second part? Mr. Moody, I think you were going to address that.
Sure. In regards to, let's say, Google results, there are many, depending on the type of browser you're using or the website you're going to, everyone's has their own built-in AI. That is true. As long as we're not loading personal information or information that contravenes our Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Act, some of those outside tools could be used without, you can, there's so many tools out there, so many options with everyone, as someone said, there's AI built into everything now. And AI isn't new. It's been around for many, many years. It's just getting more to the forefront now because of the processing power of the internet. But we can use some AI tools on other platforms if we can determine that if you load up RDOS information into that platform, that they're stored in Canadian sites instead of American sites. And that's one of the difficulties we have, the challenge with enforcing policy. We can block just about everything, but every day it's like whack-a-mole. You're going to be one AI down and two pop up everywhere. It's going to be like that going forward with this. But yes, we're going to have to address this possibly in a more concise manner as we develop this policy.
Thank you, Director Gittins.
Thanks. Can I move the administrative recommendation, please?
Yeah, and then we'll address the second question, but seconder for that? Have a seconder. Okay, and could you address the email question?
Mike, they asked for why email could be more efficient using AI.
I'm sorry, I got it backwards there. Yes, when we collected the statistics, I asked everyone on the pilot project to categorize everything they were using it for and how many minutes they estimated they were saving. On email, it's not just about having Copilot help you create an email. It comes down to doing retrieval of email, collating email together. If I'm looking, I'll give you an example. I type in, please retrieve all the emails that I received from Jim Safino regarding X and in the last 3 months, and it will go out, find everything, put it into a proper order for me. So I don't have to go hunt and peck and wondering where I put that email, if I put it in a separate folder or subfolder. It just goes out and finds it. So there's a massive amount of efficiency gained when you're just looking for email, not only when you're writing an email. And on the other side of writing an email, I can take an email that I'm writing and I can ask the program, AI program, to organize my email in a more concise manner. It may be very unorganized at the beginning, but it can help me summarize my points more concisely, and it can do that in seconds. And that saves a lot of sitting there staring at your screen, saying to yourself, I wonder how I can make this not only sound better, but be more organized and more efficient, so that the person that receives that email is getting the main points, instead of, we all have a certain style of email, that's for sure. But I find that the email component, we do a lot of communication with email, and it really does enhance the user's productivity going forward. And it's going to only get better as time goes on. Does that sort of answer the question?
I believe it did. Thank you.
Okay.
And I think it may also be something we're going to be looking into for our next item to help with efficiencies. But I think hopefully from staff's perspective, with this coming forward at the next meeting, does this give you enough context to perhaps adjust a little bit? Because I think obviously we're identifying that the data and the privacy are very important issues, but we'd be naive not to acknowledge the efficiencies that come with this. So is this good enough for you to move forward with?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something we can bring forward with. And when we bring it for adoption, we can address how it's changed from how it's looking right now.
Which is great. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Is that enough to move forward for us right now? Seeing no other hands and a motion in a second, I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Don't see hands opposed. That's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you very much. Moving then to item C, which is our Freedom of Information applications for 2025, which I believe is just a review. I will refer you into the CAO, please.
Thank you. You're correct. This is actually an information report, and it's to provide the board, the directors, with a summary of the requests received in 2025 for access to records under the Freedom of Information Privacy Act. The corporate officer, Tracy, is here to answer any questions you may have.
And do we have any questions? Director Holmes?
So I note that there's kind of double the amount that we normally have in previous years. And and when you're looking at the different categories, you know, to see, I was just curious to know where that increase comes from. Obviously Sage Mesa, but where else would have you seen increases in which kind of those categories?
Staff?
Mr. Chair, I'll refer this question to our Deputy Corporate Officer.
Thank you for the question to the chair. We have noticed kind of a general increase in where the subject matter of the increases of requests. A lot of them seem to be, when we talk to the applicants, they're wanting, sometimes it's neighbor disputes, maybe there's some court case or something that they're involved in, and they're looking for, hoping to find some records to support their position. And that's where I see more of. So it's not that there's new topics coming up, it's that we're hearing more of, well, I want to go to court and I want this information. And the requests aren't coming from lawyers for the most part, they're coming from just everyday people, but I think they're hoping to find some information that may support what they believe be a reason why they could sue somebody or have a stop put to something. And I don't know how successful they are, because they ask for records, we provide what records we have in accordance with the Act, and That's the last we hear of that matter, that particular matter from each applicant.
Thank you for that, Director Coyne.
If we're being used as a tool for that sort of thing, I think that we should probably put together a summary of that kind of activity and make sure that the minister responsible understands that this is what's happening, because I don't really believe that that was the whole point of this. When freedom of information was, really brought forward, it was to make sure we were being honest and everything, and not so much using it as a tool to go after your neighbors and whatnot. So I would like to think that the world was better, but I guess things have changed. So I would like to see us somehow involve the province in this, because it is taking up a lot of time, a lot of resources. And as we've seen, people have weaponized the freedom of information process time and time again across, not just here, but across, the province. So I think we should figure out a way to make sure the province understands that.
Thank you. Director Barkwell and then Taylor.
Yeah, to follow up with Director Coyne there, how much has the Freedom of Information request cost us this year compared to previous years, at least ballpark me? And have we had to employ outside contractors in the RDOS for this?
CEO, do you want to answer that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We currently are not keeping track of how many hours this takes. Though in saying that, when we do respond to an applicant, we do provide the hours. So if the board would like to see a summary of those hours, we could go through our previous year's files and create a summary for you. But we don't actively keep a running total of how many hours that we've spent.
You want to follow up, Director Barkwell?
I don't want to create any extra work or anything. I just thought, in Summerland, we've got, one staff person who's sort of been occupied full time. We've had to bring in contractors. It doesn't sound like you've had to bring in any contractors, so it hasn't been too much of a burden. I guess I just wanted a feel for how much of a burden it is on the staffing.
CEO?
Mr. Chair, so you are correct. Currently, we have not brought in any outside help, and at this time, we aren't considering bringing in any outside help. We've been able to handle these. I must say, though, due to the time restraints of a freedom of information request, sometimes it is a bit taxing on our staff when we have other items that are currently in the queue, and we are legislated to meet the timelines of the 30-day working day response. However, at this time, we've been dealing with it, but it's definitely on my radar to keep aware of it, and if there are any changes, I will come to the board.
Thank you. Director Taylor.
Yeah, just on the same point, I guess if we have doubled the number of inquiries, I'd like to see staff think about how they're gonna monitor the time and caseload so that we've got a handle on it coming forward.
We may also be seeing an uptick because of the two major issues that are going on right now, and it might not necessarily be a trend that's ongoing. The uptick will certainly have some impact because of the two major issues. I would suspect staff can. Any other questions or comments? You're not seeing any. So did you want a motion to receive this? We're good?
We're good. We adopted the agenda. You received it at that
Perfect.
point.
Thank you. And I would suggest if there's no further business, do we have any further business? Then we would ask for a motion to adjourn. Seconded. All in favor? Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Chair Watt, and that's it for the day. Safe travels, everybody.